So this video is going to be a breakdown of Furnished Finder versus Airbnb versus VRBO for the medium term space, the pros and cons of each one, and how you would set things up. I'm Erin Spradlin. I co-own Erin and James Real Estate. We work in Denver and Colorado Springs, the surrounding metro areas, and we typically work with sellers, buyers, and investors, and those investors are usually in the medium and short-term space. We also offer consulting. We take hourly calls on Tuesdays and Fridays, and we'll talk to you about whether or not your property makes sense for a medium-term rental, how to price it. We'll look at the listing and make suggestions. If you are looking for a book on medium-term rentals, I've written one. It's on Amazon. If you just search in Amazon, Erin Spradlin, American Nomads, it will come up. This book is available in Kindle or paperback format, and it has checklists, interviews with landlords and tenants, tips and tricks about how to do your listing, etc. It's kind of something all in one place. As a quick descriptor of this video, again, it is going to be about Furnished Finder versus Airbnb versus VRBO for medium-term rentals, so an overview of the platforms for medium-term rental and how you would set up the different platforms. Okay, so we'll start with Furnished Finder. So Furnished Finder is going to cost you $99 for the year. There's no third-party arbiter. There's no insurance built into the product. There's no money management for the transaction, and it does allow for room rentals. So not just whole space rentals, but also room rentals. Anything kind of depending on the size and what you have to offer, there is some flexibility with that. It's a very stripped down platform, and it does not have the other things that Airbnb has, like the insurance product or doing the money exchange through it. Finder does have a component on the back end if you go under the homeowner tools that allows you to issue a lease and also to do a background and credit check. This is called Key Check on the back end. So if you're in Furnished Finder and you're working with it, Key Check is just under those additional tools. And I used Key Check for the first time to do a background and credit check the other day. It was really easy. What it returned looked good to me. It was easy to read. And so and also the tenant issued it back to me quickly. So I imagine the experience on their end was fairly easy. So I was happy enough with that. In the past, I've been using Zillow Rental Manager, but honestly for Furnished Finder, I'll probably do it in there. As far as their lease product, I haven't used it, but I do think you have to pay to use it. Again, if you are looking for a lease and you want one, you could reach out to me. I'm just asking for proof that you've purchased the book or you want consulting, simply because I'm getting a lot of requests for it, but I'll share the lease that I use with my tenants if you would like. So the reason why I like Furnished Finder is that the competition is low, or it has been. This is maybe going to change in the future, but it tends to be a platform where people do not use professional photos as much. There aren't as many listings that you're competing against. And also the algorithm is not as aggressive as Airbnb, whereas with Airbnb, a lot of times they're coming in and constantly like, did you respond? Did you do this? Did you do that? Furnished Finder doesn't manage any of that. Furnished Finder is simply a platform for you to list your property, and then you handle all the communication stuff on the back end. One thing to note here too is that Furnished Finder doesn't offer an insurance product, which I know I mentioned before. Some people might think about this as a negative. I think it's kind of a positive, only because I believe certain people think that Airbnb has them totally covered because Airbnb offers insurance. But I, for my own properties and when I consult with people, definitely advise them to get insurance on top of Airbnb's insurance product. So in that way, I'm kind of anti the insurance product in Airbnb only because it gives you a false sense of security. One other bonus about Furnished Finder before I move on is that whether or not they allow for pets, it is baked into the heading. So there's the main heading, and then underneath that, there's going to be an option for whether or not it's the entire place, whether they allow for pets, how many beds, how many baths that you can filter. And so that is a benefit to Furnished Finder that Airbnb really doesn't have, and we'll see if in the future Airbnb changes that up, but right now it's kind of hard to find that stuff in Airbnb. Okay, so let's do a quick overview of Airbnb in the medium term space and talk about how they're different. So Furnished Finder takes $99 for the year. Airbnb takes 3% of the booking subtotal. There's a third-party arbiter. So yes, the answer to that is yes, there is. So if there's any kind of dispute or issue, Airbnb will get involved and kind of be the deciding factor about who gets money or how the compensation goes. There is insurance built into the product. It had previously been $1 million. They're bumping it up to $3 million. Money management for the transaction, yes, they handle that. So with Airbnb, they take the money from the guest, and in the medium term situation, they then dole that money out to you monthly. And allows for room rentals, yes. So Airbnb, you can do an entire property, you can do a room, similar to Furnished Finder in that way. Number one advantage to being on Airbnb is the volume. So as of 2018, Airbnb had 150 million users. In 2021, 300 million bookings were made on Airbnb, which was a 55% increase over 2020, which is also, and we're still seeing it in 2022, Airbnb had their best quarter ever, I think third quarter of 2022. While this is good for Airbnb, it also explains why some of you might be feeling a slump or that your Airbnbs are not renting the way that they have. Also, it might be a seasonal issue, but there's a lot of hosts and a lot of guests entering the market. I think it's okay, but it definitely softens the numbers that you can get. What we really care about with those numbers, though, are just that this is a big volume game. So again, if you're trying to rent your place and you're trying to get it in front of the most eyes, in my opinion, Airbnb is the way to go. I always say you should be renting on at least 2 of these 3 platforms, with Airbnb being mandatory for at least one of them. The reason for that is that if they haven't taken over this market yet, they soon will. And so I just think it's smart to be there first, be there with the most eyes, and be in front of people. Okay, so the second reason why I really like Airbnb, this is sort of a love-hate thing, but it's the reviews. The reason why I say that is that I feel like there's some paranoia about Airbnb, and I think that the paranoia about Airbnb is not really fair, but it's what the news reports on. So a story about an Airbnb going well is not a good news story. A story about somebody trashing an Airbnb is a much more effective, much more interesting news story. But it has not been my experience that I've had bad Airbnb guests, and I really haven't heard about this from my clients either. However, if you're worried about that, there's some really good checks and balances that Airbnb has built in. So for instance, I know in 2023, they're going to roll out a verification system for everyone in the United States. It's going to go worldwide, but it's going to be for the US first. Second, they are also, if they don't already allow it, I think they already allow it, they are going to do something where when you are a host for the first time and you are taking guests, you can do it so that you're only taking guests that have a certain number of reviews. So that way you're only getting tenants that you think are good or that you think are strong. So Furnished Finder does not have a strong a review system, so it may not be as comfortable for people that are doing medium-term rentals for the first time and or are feeling a little bit of anxiety about renting to strangers, whereas Airbnb has a very strong review system. So negatives. The 3% is way more expensive than the $99 on Furnished Finder, so it is a more expensive product to use Airbnb. I think the insurance gives you a false sense of security. This has not been my experience, but I've heard it both from real estate clients and consulting clients that Airbnb tends to side with the guest more than they tend to side with the host. The other negative about Airbnb is the competition. There's just a lot of people on Airbnb and a lot of people that take it very seriously and consider it a business. And so, all right, and then finally, let's talk about VRBO. So VRBO is going to cost you 8% of the rental and the property. So it's a 3 and 5% split. Full disclosure, I don't use VRBO, so I can't speak super specific to it, but I know some other people on the channels have been happy with it. But I think it's maybe a 3% sales and a 5% credit card charge, or the opposite. So it's either 8% of the total rental per rental, or it's an annual fee of $500. VRBO also has a third-party arbiter, so meaning if there's some kind of dispute, somebody from VRBO is going to decide how that money is allotted. VRBO offers an insurance product up to $1 million, and VRBO does not allow for room rentals. So you're starting to see this in a lot of VRBO's advertising, which is that if you're searching for VRBO, you are only going to see entire properties. You are going to know that it's a private place for yourself or for your family, and you don't need to worry about someone else being on site. All right, that's a wrap.